big question as we reopen borders here, as we have this sense that it's over, that we could potentially be setting ourselves up for failure, for variations, for some sort of escalation in a third or fourth wave. How realistic is that?
Well, the positives are that the numbers across the U.S. are looking really good. Obviously, infections are going down. The infection rate, meaning the testing of samples, is going down. So everything looks good with respect to the pandemic at this point in time being controlled here in the U.S. We have to understand that that's probably a combination of two things. The weather, people working outside more, transmission conditions aren't as optimal for the virus right now, and the vaccination campaign has really worked well, in particular to protect the very vulnerable in the population. So everything looks good right now for opening up economies, for allowing people to travel. The general public, should take advantage of this and really sort of re-embrace what life can be like without the virus around. But we've got to think a little bit further down the line, and my lab, other people are thinking about the fall. What happens when people get back inside again, when conditions are better for the virus to spread? Will we see a resurgence? And in particular, will we see that resurgence in the people that aren't vaccinated? So 3 months down the line is what we're worried about. Right now, I think from a positive perspective, people should really get out and try to enjoy themselves while continuing to realize that the pandemic is not over. We're just at a good place right now in terms of controlling the infections.
You talk a lot about the vaccines. I am curious, where are we on that vaccination campaign? There'd been a big uptick, of course, in vaccination rates. Then it's sort of leveling off. Where are we now in terms of the campaign on a rate higher of vaccinations?
We're creeping forward. I'm still optimistic that we'll hit that 70% vaccination rate that the president has set for July 4th. But given all of the positive results that are coming from the vaccination campaign, not only the fact that the safety signatures are really coming through incredibly strong, but also the efficacy of the vaccine, and in particular the efficacy against variant viruses, maintains a very high level. So this vaccine looks really, really good. It continues to look good with all of the studies that have been done since it's rolled out. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher as to why there isn't a more broader acceptance of this vaccine, because there really isn't anything about it that would cause that should cause any hesitancy for people.
I wonder about the Delta variant and how much of a concern that is, because the Brits are pretty well vaccinated as well, and they're seeing what looks like another wave of infections.
Yeah, the critical thing about that is it looks like fully vaccinated people. So if you're talking about the mRNA vaccine, people who've gotten the second dose and are 2 or 3 weeks out from the second dose, those individuals seem to have a good response that protects against the Delta variant. Remember, the UK took a different strategy. They tried to immunize everybody with a single dose initially to get broader immunity. And the Delta variant is showing us that that broader immunity is not necessarily enough to protect against it. You need the double dose immunity, the stronger immunity from a full vaccination course to really protect against that virus. So if you stick to the 2-course vaccine that we're doing here in the US, we should be able to provide really good protection against the Delta variant.
Andy, what's the latest on boosters, whether we need them?
So far, everything looks good. You may see some piles of plates behind me here. We're looking at people who've been vaccinated 6 months ago, trying to measure their antibody responses and how they're declining over time. All the studies so far look good, and because this fully vaccinated regimen provides protection against variants, I don't think there's a big emphasis yet on trying to push a booster through. What would drive that is if we see a really new variant that is evading that full vaccination immune response, or if we really notice that 12, 14 months after vaccination, you see a really significant waning of your immune response. But neither of those things have really come to the light yet.
Should we be at all worried about other virus outbreaks, Doc, or have we prepared ourselves through this pandemic for anything that may come our way?
No, I mean, pre-COVID-19, We did all of our work on influenza, and that's coming back to the forefront for us this year. The social distancing efforts that were put in place to limit COVID worked incredibly well against influenza. But we fully expect that those things won't be in place in the fall, and that we'll see a resurgence of influenza coming. We've already seen a resurgence of RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, which is a very serious infection, particularly in very young children. That started to come back already. So we are worried that these loosening of restrictions will bring back some of the viruses that we haven't seen in a while, and we don't know what that means in terms of the case numbers that we'll see from those infections. So we're now preparing for flu just as strong as we're preparing for COVID-19 this fall.